Hello everyone, Leslie Adami, 3 News anchor here. So excited to share with you all a project that we've been working on here at 3 News to recognize and celebrate Women's History Month. To help us with that, we have invited 3 panelists from our community, women who are extremely influential and have such a great impact in the careers that y'all lead. You've likely seen them in our newscasts because we interview y'all often. Y'all are the experts in your various fields, but also probably at various community events because you are very immersed in our South Texas and Coastal Bend communities. And we appreciate y'all so much. We're going to, of course, talk about your careers and what all you do in your professional worlds, but also if you ladies can also help us peel back some layers so we can get to know, what makes you you. So without further ado, our panelists today are Elizabeth Chu Richter with Richter Architects and Judith Talavera, the COO and President of AEP Texas, and Michelle Horine, the CEO of Ronald McDonald House Charities South Texas. Ladies, thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Such an honor. We know you all have such busy and packed schedules and what you do for our communities. So without further ado, we'll jump right into it. So first question, upon reflecting, what are some moments in your career or a time in your career that really challenged you, but also helped get you to where you are today? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Elizabeth.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's an interesting question because it's a long story, but we'll make it short. I have to start with my mother, who was very brave and brought my siblings and I to the United States. And that was very transformative, of course. It was pivotal. And then the next pivotal moment, I think, would be when I went to the University of Texas School of Architecture and where I met my husband, David Richter, who we worked together. And then the third one, I think, is when I decided to take off my career path and take off 12 years to raise 3 children. And then I returned when I was in my 40s to restart my career. And from that point on, I've been pedaling as fast as I can. And I think also what helped me too is kind of being able to serve on the Federal Reserve Board, a branch bank of the Federal Reserve. And I learned a lot about economics, macroeconomics, and what drives businesses and stuff, and then also serving as a national president of the American Institute of Architects. So all those things kind of built me as who I am today.
All those things, and something tells me you're nowhere near finished yet.
No.
That's hugely impressive. We have also another Longhorn alum.
Yes.
So,
welcome.
Yeah, welcome Horns, ladies. So Judith, talk to us about, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing. I know It's a lot, right, to condense in such a short amount of time. That was awesome. Judith, a time in your life, in your career that maybe was challenging, but shaped you.
So interesting, and just thinking back on some of the things that Elizabeth shared with you, I was the first person in my family to attend and graduate from college. So I'm so thankful to my parents for being as supportive as they were, because they immigrated to the States after they got married, and being a female in a Hispanic household sometimes, right, they can be fairly traditional. And I was, raised in Houston, and going away to school was going to be different, but my parents didn't hesitate in supporting me. So they were very supportive when I said I want to go to the University of Texas in Austin, and then just went, and made it happen. And, went through college and started working. And I would say, though, a specific experience that I can recall being at AEP was probably my first supervisory experience, because I came into a group that was very experienced, very tenured with the company, and with a more technical background than I had. So coming in and having a certain level of uncertainty about the team I was about to lead. Not only was I going to lead a team for the first time, but I was going to lead a group of individuals who were more tenured than I was and had different experience and different backgrounds that they brought to the table. So it challenged me, but it provided me with such an opportunity to learn from them and to learn how to lead and manage, a group. So I think that just really helped me grow in numerous ways, and that's helped me throughout my entire career.
That's amazing, because it's those areas that are unfamiliar or not always the most comfortable, right? Where we see the most growth in ourselves. And then it's so cool to reflect and look back upon like we're doing right now. And Michelle, same for you.
Well, I have a couple of moments, but when I moved to Corpus Christi, I was coming here. You'll relate. I was a news reporter for Walter Furley, and I was going to go, take Katie Couric's job on the Today Show. And until I realized I had to move out of Texas, and then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. But I remember being a producer, and trying to figure out what my lead story was going to be for the night. And so I picked up the phone, I called over to the hospital, and I was like, checking to see if someone had passed away or not. And I really remember the moment when I literally put the phone down, and I thought, who are you? That person has a family, and I felt very inhuman in that moment. And that really transformed my career path, because then at that point, I decided that I wanted to go into more of a service-oriented role. I had no idea what that was going to be, because my whole life I was going to, do television news, which I have a lot of respect for. But my path took me on a road that I wasn't really prepared for. And so I started working for a small nonprofit organization, real grassroots, wildlife in focus, kind of conservation driven. And the second, I guess, transformative moment was for me. Well, I was the executive director, but I was pretty much the only person. We had eventually maybe 2 to 3 employees. We were able to, but I was driving home one day with the kiddos. I had a 2-year-old and 4-year-old in the back of the car, and we were playing a game. What sound does a cat make? And what sound does a dog make? And my kids were so adorable, saying, meow meow and ruff ruff. And then my daughter said, well, what sound does Beck make? And so she makes like these little babbly noises. And then, what sound does Mommy make? And I said, they said, well, what sound does Mommy make? And she was like, gotta go, bye-bye, have a meeting. And I always say in that moment, I didn't know if I wanted to laugh or cry. So I laughed, and I realized that I needed to be more present in my children's lives. And so, I still stayed in the nonprofit sector, and I'm so grateful that I've been able to work for 3 different nonprofits over the last 20 years. But yeah, those were the 2 moments I think that really defined a path that I hadn't made for myself. And it's originally thought for myself, I guess.
Absolutely. And sometimes we are redirected to what we are truly called to do. And it's that call of your servant's heart, and you answered it. And I know that there are so many people at the house that are so thankful that you did, right? Because you have families of young children who are going through the unimaginable, and they're looking at you to make some really big decisions. And then Judith, with operations overseeing South and West Texas with AEP, there's a lot of people that are looking and counting on you, right, to make huge decisions. Same thing with you, Elizabeth. You are not just a force in our local scene of architecture, you're a force in the world of architecture. It's incredibly impressive, but it also comes with such a lot of pressure. So I want to go into, when it comes to making big decisions for AEP, Ron McDonald House, Richter Architects, how do you approach those moments where you have to make a big decision? Lots of people are counting on you to make that decision also in a pretty timely manner.
Yeah, well, we all make lots of decisions every day. We have to do that. And I think that it's good to have a touchstone. And that for me is the question of why and how, and why are we doing what we're doing, and how are we going to add value to the greater purpose that we're doing this for. And that always gives me an answer that I can take with me, and then I take it one step at a time and just keep moving the ball forward. I think purpose makes a big difference.
I love that. Just kind of go back to what's the purpose that we're rooted in, right? The mission here. Awesome. How about you, Judith?
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to that, I think it's really important for me to build, not operate in a vacuum, either. And I feel very strongly about the importance of building a strong team around you, recognizing what your own weaknesses are, what your own strengths are, and then being able to build a team that can complement that. right? Because different people build different strengths to a team, and I think that's very important. I also think, you know, at the end of the day, I might have to make the final decision, but I do also work very closely with a team of people, you know, around me. And for that reason, I also try to not be the first person in the room to speak up, you know, when we're collaborating on something or working on something, because I don't want to help influence the decision to go in a certain way. You know, I want to hear from others, and I encourage diversity of thought and opinion, right? That's very important. So I also try to be cognizant of that, mindful of that, in order to get to the best answer.
Amazing. So taking a step back and really taking the opportunity to lean on the network of people that you have surrounded yourself with. And Michelle, yourself?
I think for, you know, at Ronald McDonald House, something that I try to think of every day is, what if this were me? What if this were my family? And I always, you know, when I'm talking to the staff and we're you know, talking about what we need to provide for our families, we really are always thinking about, if I were staying in this room, what would I need? If I were needing a hot cooked meal, what, you know, kind of meal would I need for my family? And so I think, to Judith's point, it's all about your team, and it's all about, we're so grateful that, I would say, it takes a very special person to work at the Ronald McDonald House. People often say, I don't know how you do it. And so we, you know, I don't see sick kids. I see kids that want to be kids. I see families that want to heal together. And so, you know, I use that with our team when we have to make the tough decisions, and we have to decide, you know, make some decisions, whether it's about operations or budget or, you know, what we're dealing with. But it's always just, you know, what if this were me, and how can we provide the best possible care that we can for these families?
I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, teamwork is so important, right? No matter what sector you're in, what position, clearly, that you're in. Want to switch some gears here and go to talk about mental health. That is a conversation that is becoming a lot more, I think, normalized, and whether that's in schools, in various workplaces, and I think just it's a matter of people just choosing to shake that stigma, to allow for safe spaces to have that conversation at work. So we'll go ahead and start with you, kind of like how we've been doing. I think this has worked well, right, as going down the line here. But Elizabeth, over there. Elizabeth, we'll start with you. No pressure. But yeah, what are those mental health conversations, or how does Richter Architects kind of create space for mental health conversations?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we've learned a lot from COVID about the isolation and what it does to people. And we think that the more and more we realize that social interaction is very important, and we spend so much time at the workplace. So it's really important to design a workspace that fosters the interaction. And with open offices, for instance, you know, that you encourage interaction. You can stop by somebody's desk and drop by and say hi or ask a question or whatever, and to be transparent. And to have daylight into your space is hugely important. I know you work in a studio all day, you know, but daylight is hugely important in awakening your mind, and the view to the outside, to connect with the outside, is important as well. So it's things that opens up your mind, you know, in the design of the spaces makes a big difference. And creating outdoor spaces is even more important today. Now we realize that, you know, we want to have easy access, even in a workplace, to the outside, with view and actually physical access to it, where you can take a break and enjoy the weather, the wind, and whatever we have. Yeah. So it's about the ability to provide interaction opportunities and to connect with nature.
I love that so much. Just free your mind. Take a moment, right? A brain break, as I like to call them, to walk around, be outside. I love that.
Yeah. So for us, I mean, safety is the most important value that we have at AEP Texas. So we start every meeting with a safety moment and a conversation around safety. Electricity can be a dangerous, you know, profession. So for us, safety is always top of mind, and I would say that mental health is certainly an important aspect of that, right? I do agree with you that I think when we were going through the pandemic, it really provided opportunities to maybe even include more of that, topic into our safety, conversations. But just the fact that I think we encourage our employees to talk about safety so much, and it's just not about the operational safety. I mean, there's a lot of us who work more inside of an office, right? So it's a different type of safety, maybe potential risks that are out there. But mental health is a very important, part of it. And I do think that the pandemic highlighted some of those situations where people maybe need that social interaction, and I think we saw it with our kids, and we certainly saw it with members on our team, But another thing that I wanted to touch on is what's really important for people is also to feel like they have an ability to bring their whole selves to work, their entire selves to work also. So for us, that's also involved creating employee resource groups where people form, we have a Women at Work, right? We have OLA, the Hispanic or, origin Latin American, employees, or military veterans, and having those groups where people feel like they can bring and talk about themselves and bring their entire selves to work, I think is really important.
Breaking down those walls with folks that are at work, right? It's so important that they may not have realized they share more in common with. That's really cool. And Michelle?
We have a very emotionally exhausting workplace at times, and so something that we try really hard to do is, it's not work-life balance, it's life balance. Like, this is our life, and not, I try very hard with myself, as a mom. I'm not going to feel guilty to be able to find the balance, and I encourage our staff members, if they have a classroom party at their school for their kindergartner, go run out and do that and come back. It's very important that they don't miss those opportunities, because guilt can really be difficult on your mental health if you allow it to. So we work in a unique environment that kind of allows us some flexibility to be able to empower our employees to really find the balance and not miss those opportunities. And we love our jobs. I mean, I love what I do, and I feel so grateful to do it. But I feel like mentally, if we can allow ourselves to get exhausted very easy. So for us, it's just really trying to allow for the imbalance, encourage the balance, and try to get away from that guilt that we put on ourselves as mothers and leaders.
Yeah, and I love how you each talked about how you have to, show up as your best self so that you can also be your best self for the many people that rely on each of you. And Michelle, you talked a bit there about, being a mom. That's a whole other full-time job, and that's the perfect segue into our next topic, because you all lead such dynamic leadership positions in your careers. But I also recognize that before you come into work and long after you leave the office for the day, you are also fulfilling another full-time job that does not stop. That's being a mom, being a wife, a provider, a nurturer to your families. So this question will be, how do you manage that balance so that you can be your best self as a wife and mother as well?
Me again?
If it's cool with you, I think we'll just go down this line, or if you're like, I need a brain break, Judith, tap in. Go.
That's okay. That's okay. I think that in a way, being balanced is a myth. I think you never quite achieve that, because if you do, it's going to be boring.
That is very true. Yes.
So I think you're always slightly unbalanced, and that's good, because in that situation, your mind is working to help right yourself, if you will, to have creative ideas of how do I get through this and how can I get this done. And you become very creative in solving that problem. And you do that same thing for your children as well. Yeah, and I think, having children, raising a family really teaches you time management, which is something we all need, to do. But you juggle a lot, and it all seems to work out fine. I have 3 children, and 2 daughters and a son, and both of our daughters are architects. And so they also have family, and they're kind of going through the same thing that I went through, juggling family and work. you know, but it all kind of works out. You know, you stay with it and you be creative and you say, I'm going to make it through this. I'm off balance, but I'm going to get there.
I love that. And how cool is it that your children can like look at you and your husband, and also they have such great role models already as parents, but also professionally. That is so cool.
Well, I don't want to miss my son. He's a doctor, so he's okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's doing pretty well too. Okay. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on your children's accomplishments. That's such a blessing. We love to hear that.
I feel fortunate.
Yeah. How about you, Judith?
Well, I am a mother to 2 boys, one who is about to graduate from college, another UT Longhorn to the family,
Nice.
and one who's about to graduate from high school. So we have a busy spring ahead of us, but exciting. And then, of course, my husband. And I think, I do kind of think that sometimes work-life balance can be a myth, because sometimes it's out of whack, right? I mean, sometimes work can be all-consuming. And I have to take a moment to apologize to my family and say, I'm sorry, but if I'm extra, stressed, or, there's just a lot going on right now. And, but it's also very important for me, and always has been, to be there, to be a present wife and a mother, and to be there for my kids' activities. And I think it's very important as a leader for our AEP Texas team to see that as well. Right? Because it's important for them to know kind of what you were saying, Michelle, right? It's important to not miss those important moments in your family's lives, I think, because you don't want to live with regret at the end of the day, and those are moments that you can't get back. So so I do encourage people, having that flexibility. And of course, we have a job to do, and we have to be sure that we're doing it well, and we're executing, because people are depending on us for service. But it's also important that we find moments to be present in our families' lives. And I think if that's important to you as an individual, then we need to find the time for that.
That is beautiful. We love that. We love that. And Michelle, I know while we were trying to set this up and make sure that you could also be one of our panelists, that you were also in the midst of rushing to playoff basketball games. So I know this is a sentiment that you share as well.
Exactly. For me, I have a senior in high school, and so we're closing chapters right now, which so are you. And I go back to the mental health question, but that's something that is new, and I have a 20-year-old daughter, and she's out of state, and so finding the balance there is difficult. I remember when my kids were 2 and 4, when they were doing the cat and dog noises, I was like, I can't wait until they're grown up. And one of my friends says, one of the hardest things is having adult children, because you worry more. And so I'm starting to see, especially as they leave the nest and become independent, there's a little bit of stress on me. Do we do everything we need to do to make them successful? But it's again, you're not always in balance, but most importantly, like Judith said, you've got to be present when you can be. And there are those moments, and it's just when you can't be, and you just communicate and make sure that they understand what's going on. But most importantly, I think being able to balance family and work, fulfills me. Definitely being a basketball mom has been fulfilling for me, and a choir mom for my daughter.
Yes,
so I'm looking forward to the next chapter. We'll see how that goes. So.
Oh, and I'm sure it'll be wondrous. And that there's a big reason why I wanted to make sure that we touched on that topic, because I think it's so easy for women in our community, well, anywhere in our community, to see you all, just like I said, leaders in your careers, say like, well, they're just out here doing it and they're making it look so easy. But on the whole, when you, like I mentioned earlier, when you get home, that's a whole other full-time job, and y'all wear that well. You would never have thought that you are hustling, bustling to practices, or probably to graduation ceremonies coming up. So y'all are just doing amazing. Certainly an inspiration. And
can I just say, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. No. Just one thing that I really did want to touch on, because I think it's very important. It's been very important to me, and I'm sure to the two of you. It's okay to ask for help, too, right? I mean, sometimes you can't do it alone, and I know I've had a lot of help. I mean, it takes a village. It takes a village, a lot of times.
There's strength in asking for help.
Right.
Yeah.
So Just wanted to make
No.
sure we didn't miss that.
That's such an important reminder for all of us. I love that. So thank you for sharing that. And then, mentorship is so important, right, in any career. I'm sure that you all had at some point mentors in a job or a position at some point early in your careers that you're pursuing that you could probably think of right now. I know for me, I can think of a few. And there are so many probably young women who watch what you do, whether you know it or like it or not, that are watching what you do, watching what you say, and they're taking notes because that's the influence that each of you have. So for the young women in our community and for the youth in general here in our Coastal Bend community, what's some advice that you would share with them when it comes to pursuing their goals?
I think that not to overlook the person that's sitting right next to you or standing by you, because that could be the best teacher and the best mentor. It's about working side by side, I think. To me, that's the best way to learn from each other, is a hands-on experience like the apprenticeship programs. It's really helpful to be able to work side by side, and then you'll share knowledge, both ways. And so I think it helps to have it spend time that way rather than say, well, let's schedule a meeting and so I can have a mentorship program or a mentorship class with you or something like that. But it's more natural than that. It's more organic. Real mentorship, I think it's organic.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Yep.
Yeah. I think, and it might sound really cliche, but take a chance, right? Just get out there and do it. If you think it's risky, maybe it is, but that's okay, and that's when you're going to learn the most, right? I think back on my career or just my life, and the opportunities when I've had the most success is, going away to school when no one else had done it, in my family. But that's what I envisioned for myself, right? I consider myself very much of an introvert. I don't know that my husband would agree with me, but I do. But taking that first opportunity to ask for that first internship that I applied for in school, and it changed my entire life, and taking that first supervisory role, and even this position, right? I have not been comfortable going into any role that I've gone into that has been completely transformative for me. So just being uncomfortable and being willing to take a chance and take that risk and believe in yourself, I think can make just a huge amount of difference.
I love that. It's okay for things to kind of freak you out a little
Right.
bit, right? To make
Yeah.
you a little anxious is how you know that it's important, right? So I love that you shared that. Michelle?
I would say to embrace your weaknesses, because in the world of TikTok and social media and our kids that are attached to these phones, there's a sign of perfection, and they think they need to get to a certain a certain perfect point in their life. And we all have weaknesses, and what makes us strong is leveraging those and finding the people that have those strengths to put on your team. I'm not a finance person. I don't love numbers. I was not one that was going through all the math, the calculus classes in college. But I put a strong finance person on your team. That those weaknesses, and so that it will balance out your team, rather than looking at it as I don't do this well. We all have a lot of strengths, but we're not perfect at anything. And so I guess for me, the best advice is and also the road that you think that you're going to travel on, be prepared that there's going to be a fork in the road, and you're going to have to decide which way to go and make difficult decisions. And it's not always going to be exactly how you planned it, but just having the right people beside you to lead the way, I think, is important.
Love it. Because the journey, whether there's some cliffs and hills and valleys, it's beautiful when you're able to look back and reflect upon it. You're like, well, I did all that and it got me here.
Yeah.
Wow. And there were some really tough and hard moments. Well, ladies, thank you all so much. That was all super insightful and incredibly inspiring. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask if there's anything else pertaining to the topics that we hit on, or just Women's History Month in general. There's going to be a lot to celebrate and a lot to highlight this month. But if there's anything else any of you ladies would like to add as we celebrate this month.
Well, I appreciate you gathering us together. You know, it's been really fun, and to focus on women too and their accomplishments and their challenges. I think one thing that I often share with young people is that, and I think some of us, when in our talk, kind of mentioned these things too, is to show up. Yeah, to show up, think globally, think locally, act locally, you know, but most of all, be present. Grab the moment that you have right now and do your very best in it, because that will be your stepping stone to the future.
Can I get all of that on a t-shirt? You know, call Hobby Lobby and see if they can put all of that on like one of the signs for my living room. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else, ladies?
I don't know that I can say it any better, but I would just say, you know, for all the women out there or young girls, you know, think outside the box, right? Challenge yourself. If you don't know what you can do until, you know, you set your mind to it and you take a chance on whatever opportunity it is that you think is out there for you and that you want for yourself, right? So take that risk, take that chance, jump, you know, and you won't regret it.
Love it.
So.
Something I learned last week when I was with my peers is check on the strong. And I really thought, wow, that's pretty powerful. You know, I have some great employees that pop in my office and they're like, how are you doing today? And it means so much to me that they're checking on me. And so as a woman, I think that we should remember, always check on the strong.
I love that. And you said that was an example that just kind of came to you pretty recently.
Yeah.
So we're always learning. That's a nonstop thing. I love it. Ladies, thank y'all so much again for what has been such an uplifting and powerful conversation, and also just a real and honest one. So thank you all for sharing a little bit more about yourselves with us today. And I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of young women, people, our viewers, who are going to be able to take several somethings from this conversation, hopefully apply it to their lives, their workplace, their family. So thank you all for setting that example.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our viewers who joined us from home, thank you so much for being part of this discussion. We'll see you again soon.